I loved you quietly at first, like the hush before moonrise, when the air holds its breath and even the trees lean in to listen. You were there, not loud or sudden but steady like the rhythm of tide against shore. The night had just begun its slow descent, and I felt you before I knew you. Felt the warmth of your gaze like starlight finding skin. We weren't anything then, just two souls wandering, but the sky knew. It stitched our names into its seams and whispered them through the winds. I didn't need you to speak, the silence between us said everything. In that stillness I saw how your smile could eclipse every shadow inside me. I didn't fall all at once. I unfolded petal by petal, under your gentle sun. Even the stars noted. I imagined them watching, blinking approval across velvet black. They knew what we were before we did. Some loves arrive like fire, ours came like dusk, tender and glowing. And every time I remember the beginning, I swear I hear the stars sigh. You made me feel like the night sky was ours alone. With every passing moment you revealed another galaxy within you. Thoughts, scars, memories you never shared with anyone else. You spoke in half-formed metaphors and unfinished dreams. And I loved every crooked sentence. You didn't ask me to understand everything, just to listen, and I did with my whole heart. You held my hand like it was something sacred, something breakable, but never broken. There was reverence in your touch, like you knew I had been mishandled before. With you my laughter returned like a tide long out but never gone. I remember tracing your jaw with my eyes, as you spoke of the things you feared: failure, loss, not being enough. I wanted to wrap every fear in warmth and send them floating away into the stars, where nothing could reach them. I never told you that night, but I loved you more for being vulnerable than I ever could have for pretending to be strong. Beneath the silence of the cosmos, we built something louder than sound, something only the stars could hear. There were nights we didn't speak at all, just your breath mingling with mine, the occasional shift of your fingers against my wrist, the softness of you pressed into me like a promise. We didn't need conversation, we were fluent in quiet. You'd point to a star and tell me stories, some real, some made up, and I'd nod, letting your voice guide me through constellations. I memorized your inflections, the way your mouth curled around hope. I would have followed that voice through 1,000 lifetimes. You called me home once, and I felt something in me unravel, something tight and tired, that had waited too long for that word. It wasn't fireworks with us, it was steadier, deeper. It was the kind of love that doesn't need to shout because it's written in the sky. We became a secret the stars were too kind to tell. And even now when I walk alone beneath them, I swear I hear echoes of your laughter bouncing between constellations, like they're still listening, still watching, still keeping us in their sacred orbit. I watched you sleep once with the kind of wonder poets try to bottle, but never quite capture. Your chest rose and fell like the tide of some quiet sea. And in each inhale I saw a life I wanted to be part of. Your fingers twitched like you were holding dreams too fragile to release. I wanted to ask what you were seeing, but I didn't want to wake you or the magic. Instead I whispered a promise you'd never hear, but I hoped the stars would carry. I would stay through seasons, through storms, through silence. I would stay even when staying meant standing still. Even when it meant walking beside you through shadowed valleys. That's love, isn't it? Not the grand gestures but the quiet vows made in moonlight. The kind the universe eavesdrops on and tucks into the corners of galaxies. I wonder if the stars wrote that night down somewhere, etched our silhouettes into the sky so they'd remember what devotion looks like. Because I remember, I always will. I don't need photographs or poems to remind me. I have the sky and the way you looked in sleep beneath. You showed me parts of yourself others had only glimpsed and misunderstood. You let me see the unpolished edges, the weathered scars, the places where hope had once been, and had to be rebuilt. I didn't turn away. I reached out and touched those places like holy ground. We don't always get to choose what breaks us, but sometimes we get to choose who helps us heal. You chose me, and I chose you again and again. In 100 small ways. In bringing you coffee the way you like it. In remembering the things you say in past. In holding your hand during hard days. And never asking you to be more than who you are. Love, I learned, isn't always easy. But it's always worth it when it's real. You were real, are real, more real than any dream I've had. And when I looked into your eyes and saw the storms you'd survived, I didn't feel fear, I felt honored, that you let me in, that I got to walk beside you, to witness the aftermath and the rising. The stars must have seen us, quiet and brave, beneath them. Time moved strangely when we were together, like it bent to give us room. Hours melted, nights stretched long, just to make space for every shared secret and touch. And I could have lived 100 lifetimes in one evening, with you. We talked about everything and nothing. What we feared, what we hoped, what we wanted from forever. You said my name like it was music, like it mattered. And I realized then that this wasn't just love, it was belonging. The kind that settles into your bones and makes a home there. We weren't just two people falling. We were rising into something neither of us had known we needed. Something tender, something wild. And I believe the stars, those ancient storytellers, wrote about us that night. Not in words but in light. Maybe someone will look up centuries from now and feel a pull toward one particular star. And maybe, just maybe, it will be us, still whispering across the night sky, still telling the story of how we found each other and stayed. There were days we didn't get it right, days when silence wasn't soft but sharp, when misunderstanding crept in like a chill. But even in those moments I loved you. I never stopped. Love isn't proven when things are perfect. It's revealed in how we show up during the imperfect. You showed up every time, not always with the right words but with presence. And I met you there, again and again. In that space where two stubborn hearts choose each other despite the noise. The stars saw those moments too. The rough ones, the healing ones, the beautiful in-between. And I hope they recorded those just as faithfully. Because love isn't made of just light. It's made of shadows and the courage to keep reaching for each other even when it's hard. I saw your flaws and they didn't make me love you less. They made you human. And I never wanted a perfect love. I wanted real. I wanted this. I wanted you. I still remember the way your hand felt in mine. The first time it happened without hesitation. No performance. No pause. Just instinct. Like our bodies knew something our minds hadn't caught up to yet. Not just in the way our fingers interlaced, but in the way your presence calmed my storms. You weren't a loud love. You were a steady one. The kind that doesn't knock you off your feet but builds a path beneath them. I needed that. I needed you. There were nights I would watch you when you didn't know. Just to memorize how you existed when you thought no one was looking. And every time I was struck by the quiet strength in you. You carried weight without complaint. You loved without condition. You gave without asking for anything in return. That's what made me fall over and over again. Not just the way you loved me but the way you were. The stars had it right. They shone a little brighter every time you looked up. Maybe because even they recognized your light. I remember when you first cried in front of me. You apologized like it was a crime, like emotion made you weak. But I saw strength in those tears. A kind of honesty the world rarely gives men permission to show. You were beautiful in your vulnerability, and I loved you even more in that moment. Not because I wanted you to hurt, but because you let me in. That's what love is, isn't it? Letting someone see the raw, unfiltered parts and trusting they won't run. I didn't run, I held you, and in holding you, I think I held every version of you. The boy who wasn't allowed to cry. The man who learned he could. And maybe the stars cried too that night. Or maybe they celebrated. Because in a world that teaches us to armor up, softness is revolutionary. You were my revolution.